A very good afternoon indeed to you. If you're not familiar with this part of the programme, then allow me to suggest very modestly that you're in for something of a treat. This is your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of enlightenment that's fast going out of fashion in the current climate. It's a celebration of knowledge, of education, of expertise. But don't feel excluded if you don't think that you are an expert, because you might have watched something on telly last night that qualifies you to ask a question, answer a question, I beg your pardon. It's the radio equivalent, if you will, of those newspaper features where a reader writes in, asks a question, and a few weeks later they get an answer from another reader. Except it's much funnier than that, and much more exciting, and much, much sexier. Seriously, it's brilliant. It needs numbers. 0345 6060 is the number that you need. If you have a question, a who, a why, a what, a where, a when, a whither, whence, even the occasional wherefore. Why do we do that? Where does that come from? What's that all about? Why are we, why, the what, who, why, where, when, anything at all, as long as it's not boring. You might not know whether or not something is boring, so we reserve judgment on that. I'm afraid you'll be politely invited to move along if Rosie and Caroline consider your inquiry to be rubbish. The only other circumstances in which I'd rather you didn't get on air is repetition, but that's entirely my lookout, really, these days. You can go to lbc.co.uk, have a look at the archive. It's great fun, actually. But it gives you an indication of whether or not the question you're toying with asking has already been asked. Otherwise, you wait until you hear somebody ask a question to which you do know the answer, and then you get in like Flint. You call me immediately and provide resolution. I'll ask what your qualifications are, by which I don't mean, I'll bag a gymnastics award for James or a PhD in quantum physics. I just mean, where did you get that nugget of knowledge that you've just shared with the rest of us? So it could be that you're the professor of robotics at Middlesex University, or the professor of the public understanding of science at the University of Brighton, both of whom are regular contributors to the programme. Or it could just mean that you saw it on QI or The Simpsons, or you read it. I just need to know how you know, because that's the only indicator I've got of deciding whether or not you can go definitive, and if you go definitive, you'll receive a Mystery Hour round of applause. If your qualifications for answering the question are close to perfect, so if I say, well, how do you know that? And you say, well, I was actually the first person to go up Centre Point, James, after it was completed, because my dad was the architect, If your qualifications are perfect, you'll get a Ray Liotta. If you don't know what that is, well, let's just hope that someone rings in today with perfect qualifications. Shall we crack on? I think that's it. Vic's in Worcester. Vic, question or answer?
Hello, James. Just a question.
Hello, Vic. What is
I'm
it?
afraid I'm going to drag the level down a bit now. Talking to grandson the weekend on about favourite pop and their favourite fizzy drink, and you might know what it is, the big one.
Go on.
And I said, my favourite was dandelion and burdock.
Oh, I like dandelion and burdock.
And then they said, well, no dandelions, but what's burdock?
I think it's a root.
And I can't answer them.
I think it's a root. But
None of my friends know, no one knows.
Nobody knows. Don't need to.
I thought you'd know, the font of knowledge you are.
Oh, yeah, that's a very polite way of saying you smug know-all git. Vince is in Addleston. Vince, question or answer?
It's an answer, James.
Go on, Vince.
It's with regards to the burdock. It is actually a biennial weed that you'll probably see quite a lot in the countryside, and a lot of people recognise it from the little prickly ball that you get on top that children used to throw at each other on their school jumpers.
That's the burr.
Yeah, that's the burr, but that's the plant, the burdock.
Is it the root of the burdock?
The root is what they use for the dandelion and burdock. But
so is it a dock leaf? Is it linked to dock leaves?
No, because dock leaves, even though they're both called dock, they're both completely different species of plant. The dock's obviously like a very shiny, smooth, quite large leaf, but when you see burdock, they're really, really large, bold foliage on those, so quite unmistakable.
It's the root of that we cook up.
Yeah, you can dig it up for starch. It's quite deep, but you can dig right down and you can use that. It's like a potato. When you dig it up, you can actually roast it over a fire.
So like a Jerusalem artichoke or something like that?
I'm not familiar with the Jerusalem artichoke, so I can't comment on that, but I'm just talking about...
If you ever want to be exceptionally flatulent, get stuck into some Jerusalem artichokes.
I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, good. What are your qualifications, mate? It's a beautiful answer.
Thank you. I give guided walks for the National Trust on edible and medicinal plants.
Oh, come on. Oh, man, I think you've done it.
I'm Ray Liotta, and you're listening to James Obrien on LBC. If you build it, they will come.
Vince, you got a Ray Liotta.
That's going straight down on my resume.
How about that? I mean, you really do that as well for the National Trust.
Yes, indeed.
Oh,
yes.
Do you is root beer the same as dandelion and bur? I wonder if it's the same root that they use in root beer, because there's a real similarity between root beer and dandelion and burdock.
Yeah, I would definitely say that, with the name root beer, it pretty much...
It's going to be very similar kind of process. Mate, that is a real moment for me. And are you, how much of the heretic behaviour of the National Trust are you personally responsible? Is it you that banned Easter, Vince? Were you involved in that process?
No, I'm purely just, I come out as self-employed, I go along and I just take the public along walks, and like I say, I just tell them about all the edible and medicinal weeds that are just growing in and around
I'd like
London.
to go on that. I'd like to go on something like that. What do I do? Just go to the National Trust website?
Yeah, go on National Trust, and it's River Way. I'm doing a couple for them in May.
Way. All right, I'll look that up. Yeah. That sounds absolutely fascinating. That National Trust website, by the way, has over 13,000 mentions of Easter, just in case anyone's still labouring under the nonsense that the Daily Telegraph published earlier this week.